All right. Okay, let's start. So welcome. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. All right. So do we have any questions before we start? Anything? All right. Okay, so we are going to start now with chapter 3. And our plan for today is this. I'm going to talk a little bit about major issues from chapter 3. Then I'll get you to work on the issue of gaze. I'll introduce it first, and then we're going to talk about that. And then I'm going to kind of outline our plan for the next 2 weeks because we're not going to, during the next 2 weeks until the quiz is due, we're going to do a few different things. So that's where I am at. And then we're also going to talk about your submissions and everything at the end as well. So I'm going to share screen and talk to you a little bit about the chapter. So we're starting on a chapter that deals with modernity, spectatorship, the gaze, and power. So this is kind of the major issues that are outlined in the chapter. What I want to concentrate on today is mainly modernity and the gaze, and then we're going to talk about spectatorship, perhaps, and definitely power some other time. So before we start, though, what I would like you to do is in chat, if you could please try to define what something modern or modernity means. What does it mean? You're welcome to look it up if you, or think about the chapter that you read, but just everyone individually, quickly, 1 sentence, 2 sentences. What does it mean? Like, what is modern or modernity? Okay, just stop sharing so I can see the chat. So I've got novelty, contemporary, quality, condition, something that aesthetically appeals to current generation. That's great. New, up to date, reflection of the time. Something modern. Yeah. So what does that mean? Okay. Oh, got a lot. From modern generation. Okay. And what is modern generation? A popular trend. Okay. Relevant to current circumstances. Reflecting current values, ideas, structures. Something that is in reflection to modern era. Something that reflects the time period we're living in. Okay. Time period in the late 1800 and mid 1900. Grace Sellers, thank you. That shows that you've read. The chapter went in depth on how capitalism created our current system. True enough, but how does that relate to modernity? It directly challenges past movements. Yes, that's one aspect of that for sure. Something that reflects, okay, current society, today's economic standards and social structures. Okay. modern is whatever in people in most recent or current time period feel that is relevant to all forward thinking. Okay, all right, great, in relation to the topic. Okay. Okay, so I'll stop here, and I'm going to go back to PowerPoint in a second. But what I want you to write these things down, because those are important, and we're going to not only we're going to deal with that in chapter 3. In chapter 8, we're also going to talk about postmodernity. So you know you're going to have to remember that for, until then as well. Okay, so modern time, when we talk about modernity or something modern in our everyday speech, when we talk to our friends, we talk about something modern as being now. But when we talk about history or art or visual culture, when we talk about something that's going on right now, we call it contemporary. Okay, that's not modern, that's contemporary. So if I have a course on contemporary art, that course better start, you know, in around 1980, but go up to today, or go up to almost today. Okay, so that is the definition. Now, when we talk about modern art or modern culture, modern history, your textbook says that it started around Renaissance and it ended around 1960s. So again, according to your textbook and many other scholars and textbooks, it started around Renaissance and ended around 1960s. And then we're going to postmodern, and we're going to talk about that in chapter 8. So it's really important and really confusing, because obviously we mean different things. So all the stuff that you talked about, trends and kind of reflecting our current values, that's more I would call it contemporary. Today, we're going to talk about modernism, modernity, and we're going to talk then about how the modernity created what we would call modern subject, a person who is functioning within modern times, and how that affects us today, and what do we mean by that? Okay, so then we have modernism, which is basically movement of art or culture. So if you studied like surrealism, or I don't know, Dada, or even Impressionism, that these are all part of modern movements, modernism. And then we have modernity. And modernity is that time period of modernism, but it relates more about how we experience life and how we feel living in that modern times. Okay, so you may want to write it all down, and I'll come up. I'll go over it again a few times to actually explain that. Okay, now I'm gonna go back to the screen sharing. Okay. So what I want to do today is to go talk a little bit about modernity, and then I want to move to the idea of the gaze and kind of like really look at that. So modernity is historical period during which a broad set of economics and social structures took place. And your textbook, and I'm saying that but like that because I'll explain in a second. So your textbook essentially separates modernity into 3 stages. Roughly modernity started, modern period started in 1453 and ended around 1965. Now, there are books out there that would say that the modernity started with the Industrial Revolution, so much later. And there are books out there that would say that modernity started around the time of Gothic period. So, and the end usually kind of falls between late 1950s to 1970s, depending on the book. Again, I'm just following what textbook says because it's just easiest. I'm mainly concerned with the like end time period rather than beginning, so it doesn't really matter. Questions? No? Okay. So modern period is basically about emphasis on individual, and this is very important. We're no longer talking about community as much as we're talking about individual and individuals kind of ability to survive. And of course, more and that's not so much in the 15th century, but a lot more we're seeing that in 1900. The emphasis as well on the secular society, on the secular kind of approaches to life, so secular humanism. With Industrial Revolution and even prior to that, we see cultivation of economic growth, a quick, rapid economy development. And one of the really important things that modernity, in which modernity differs from other time periods, is that belief in progress, that things are going to get even better, that science and technology are going to help us to live better, to be better. Now, we're in 2020, we're not really sure if technology necessarily does all the wonderful things. It also kind of maybe destroys us in a way. And not all the science are great. Think about atomic bomb, but generally during the modern period, that's the belief. So let me just kind of go here for a second. I want to modernity. So the textbook divides us into early modern period, and then classical modernity, and then late modern period. So the modernity starts with the inventing of printing press. So the dissemination of printing on print material, the imagery and mainly reading material is this, that signifies the start of modernity. And as a result of that, and just because of the kind of Renaissance ideas spread around, there is a lessening of religious influence. So that's kind of early modernism, that's Renaissance and Baroque and etc. And very quickly, I want us to get into classical modernity because that's much more important for us. So it starts around 1730, roughly. And the two main things, the Enlightenment, kind of that movement, philosophical movement that tries to secularize knowledge and advance science. And politically, there is French Revolution. So for the first time, we're looking at the attempt, a really poor one in a way, at democracy. There is also American Revolution as well, of course, and then there is also kind of the democracy, maybe a better attempt, because French Revolution, of course, ends with Napoleon coming back to power. So during that classical modernity, again, there is emphasis on the individual, but there's also emphasis in belief in reason, not emotion, but reason, just desire to organize all the knowledge So encyclopedia, right? How do you organize? How do you actually explain everything that you get encyclopedia? By 1830s, we're also getting to photographic reproduction and positivism that we studied, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, and then late modernity is what really, really concerns us here, is starts around 1870s and ends around 1965. So it includes like this culmination of colonial power in the late 19th century, and also disintegration of colonialism. So again, we're looking at the kind of major shift in terms of the main, political and cultural players such as British Empire, and then slow disintegration of their power and kind of spread around of other ideas and influence of the countries that were previously colonized. So within that, and then I'm going to move forward. I have a PowerPoint that more or less follows the book as well. It talks about how modernity, how early 20th century kind of embraced modernity and what that meant in terms of the visual production, architecture. There's things on architecture, etc. What I want to do is I want to quickly introduce you to the idea of kind of interaction between machine and the human being. You're looking at Margaret Bourke White, born in 1904, died in 1971, a very important American photographer who was very interested in photographing kind of New York through an interaction in New York between machinery and modernity and people. So here, for example, if you look at this to your right, you see these people building this huge that looks like a turbine. And that kind of interaction between people and machine really, I think, evoked and kind of gave rise to artistic imagination. And with this kind of idea of the interaction, we're looking at the idea of the start of the idea of the cyborg. So very often in the 1930s, we're looking at when we see photography, we're seeing bodies enmeshed with the machines. And that kind of foreshadows or starts the idea of the cyborg. Anybody, what is a cyborg? In our popular imagination, you don't have to look it up, just tell me.
Isn't that a human mixed with a robot?
Yes, thank you. It's a human mixed with a robot, or it's a human kind of mixed with any kind of industrial machine or machinery in general. It doesn't have to be a robot at all. It could be a very much mechanical. And at that time, it is mechanical. And kind of, I think you can appreciate, right, that it's an incredibly interesting idea of how a person and machines can interact, but also almost be kind of combined together. So let me briefly introduce you to these two people. And this is Salvador Dali, about whom we're not going to talk today and right now. And Man Ray, to your right, the shorter one is Man Ray. He's a photographer, and they are photographed here in Paris in 1934. So Man Ray is actually a man from Brooklyn who came to Paris in the 1920s and became really kind of interested in photography, but also photography that has a kind of Dadaist and Surrealist bent to that. And Surrealism, if we want to kind of to define it very, very quickly, it's something that surpasses reality, right? Something that is not real, outside of the real, something that is, and it could be anything really. So Man Ray starts, and Man Ray is an amazing photographer, really. If you haven't seen his work, I'm sure you've seen his work without recognizing that it's his work, because it reproduced very widely. And Man Ray has this very crisp black and white style, and he is really masterfully photographs things that could have a dual meaning. So let me show you how he envisions maybe an idea of the cyborg. So this is Man Ray's photograph of Veiled Erotic by Murray Oppenheim. Murray Oppenheim at the press. So the woman's name, the woman that is photographed here, her name is Murray Oppenheim. And the photograph was done in 1933. So in the photograph has dual title, Veiled Erotic and Murray Oppenheim at the press. Can you just look at that carefully and maybe tell me what you see? Just unmute yourself and talk when you're ready.
Something I notice is like the black like oil, or I'm assuming that's what it is, on her hand and like down her forearm.
Yeah, the ink, it's probably the printing ink, right? Since she's at the printing press, but absolutely. There is something that there's her forearm is covered in that, in ink, yes. What else do we see?
I noticed like the background is like kind of like worn down just a little bit. Like usually when you're taking like, I don't know, well not taking, but like when you're nude, usually you're in your bedroom or your bathroom, but she seems to be in like a industrial like factory or something like that.
That's a great observation. Yes. So she's nude. She's very unexpectedly nude. In such an industrial environment, we expect people to wear something like work clothes. We do not expect them to be photographed nude. Yes, that's very true. Okay, what else do we see here? What do you think about her pose, the way she stands? Come on.
She
Yeah.
looks as though
Is those like in reference to like women or fainting?
Are you saying she's maybe fainting?
Well, is she taking on the classic pose of like a woman?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep. So I had someone else started talking. What?
I feel like she's positioned like purposefully, like the angle of her body so that things are like covered but also like not, like you know what's supposed to be there, but it's like perfectly angled so that it's covered by the like printing wheel.
Right. Okay. Wonderful. So the two comments are great. So first of all, we see that quintessential female pose where she's standing kind of like 3/4, very much a classical position of the sculpture, and her hand is by her forehead. So it's very posed. It's very artificial. At the same time, she's behind that wheel. And Man Ray is creating her, he calls it veiled erotic, because in essence, we know we know she's a woman, but at the same time, she looks quite boyish. Look at her hair slicked behind. The wheel covers her breasts, right? We can't really, we know they're there, but we can't really see. And finally, her around her genitalia. And that Man Ray being very cheeky and very, very naughty. So we see the pubic hair, right? But we also see the handle of the press right there. So he's playing with that kind of like feminine, masculine, machine, human. Like he's creating this duality for us that is really, really interesting. And it's Murray Oppenheim was an artist herself, so she fully participated in that representation, and she really didn't mind. He aestheticizes her, but at the same time he makes her look like this part, she's part of this machine environment, and she loses some of her eroticism, some of her femininity to that very mechanized environment, I think. So this is the kind of the beginning of this idea of the cyborg. And next time we talk about this chapter, we're going to look at more advanced and more contemporary ideas of the cyborg as well. One of the greatest examples of that kind of idea of the interaction between machine and the human is Charlie Chaplin's movie Modern Time. If you, I'm not going to show anything, but if you feel like kind of find at least parts of that and look at that, he really shows how a person and kind of in this incredible industrialization really interact. And what Charlie Chaplin takes on and says, well, essentially, the people become very small and very insignificant because of the machines. Okay, so
they're what?
They become very, very small, very insignificant because of the machine. The machine really starts leading and controlling our life based on what Charlie Chaplin is saying. It's now, when you read the chapter, or you read the chapter, there is really kind of complex and interesting discussion there that is based in Jacques Lacan's psychoanalytical theory. Okay, so we've got another one with the Frenchman with the cigar, right? That one is really interesting, kind of like wavy. So he was born in 1981, he passed away. And he really took on Freudian psychoanalysis in many ways and built upon that. And I cannot explain why, but I think if you study psychology, I don't know, if you're a psychology major or minor, have you come across Jacques Lacan? Anyone? Say yes if you did. No, yeah. For some reason, he's not very influential in psychology, but he's very influential in visual culture and literature and kind of his cultural studies. So here is what, and I want to talk about that idea of the modern subject, like the condition of the person that he experienced living in the modern society. Okay, so what Jacques Lacan says is this: when you're born and you're a baby and you're all cute and everything, usually someone takes care of you, either your mom or someone else, but there is constant care, and you don't have understanding, you really don't have yet understanding of being independent, being a person, being yourself. So that idea of being an independent subject is not there. Eventually, you know, when you're maybe between 1 and 2, at some point, you, like this little girl here, you find the mirror, and you kind of look at yourself and say, oh, who is that thing? or I mean, this is of course kind of symbolic. We eventually we arrive at the understanding that we're separate from our caregivers. So Jacques Lacan says that at that point our personality kind of splits. So we all have split personality, and one part of us has to navigate the everyday life and the expectations of actually living. You know, we can't really, if I really want ice cream at 8 o'clock in the morning and I'm 5 years old, very quickly I will understand that until I had my breakfast and lunch, I probably won't get any ice cream. So we adapt our desires to and kind of what we want to the everyday life and being in the society. And the more we grow up, the more those two become separated. There is our authentic being, the kind of like the one that has wants ice cream and everything else that you're not allowed to have, fill in the blanks here, all the time. And then there is also that part of us that is being conscientious when we go to work, a good student, etc., etc. So he says that happens around this time, and then this authentic part of us goes quite deep, and that has to do with the spectatorship theory. So what I have in this presentation is a video which I'm not going to show you right now, but I urge you to watch that when you prepare for your quiz. It's about 6 minutes, and it really gives you a really good explanation of the mirror stage. So to summarize what Jacques Lacan says, it's the mirror stage is the separation between infant and his mother or caregiver, and acquisition of the sense of self. Usually the toddler is over optimistic about their abilities, you know, the terrible two that you may have heard of, where the child is like, I want to do it myself. That's because the kid just discovered that he or she can actually be independent at some point. And it results in conflict between the actual subject and the sense of self. So that kind of that duality. Now, why is that important? That is important because it has to do with the spectatorship theory. Spectatorship theory. I don't want you to write this down. Just listen to what I'm saying, and then we're going to move. In spectatorship theory, we think that we ask why people enjoy going to movies so much. Why do we find some of the images, you know, that are really, really exciting for us? So we find them really beautiful, and we can relate to certain things. What is it about us that allows us to suspend the disbelief completely? Like you go to a movie theater, or you turn on your Netflix or whatever, your Amazon Prime, and you kind of become completely engrossed in that environment. What is it that allows us completely narrow down and kind of zoom literally onto something? And what Lacan's theory suggests is that authentic self that we don't necessarily use in everyday life, that authentic self is really kind of gets excited and connected when we watch something. So when we relate to sometimes we like things and we can't really even explain why we like who in their normal mind would like horror movie where you know, things like that. And the spectatorship theory, the idea of the mirror stage and this kind of authentic self, the self that is kind of gets hidden, that the self that really enjoys and gets connected to various movies or images that we watch. That's the explanation, or one of the explanation. Now, the other side of the spectatorship is that spectatorship, or looking, kind of looking at something, is linked to the idea of knowing. How do you know? You look at that, you read, you understand, but you also look. And the spectator then is the position of the subject. I look, if I'm looking, I am the subject, I'm doing the looking. And spectatorship is the condition of looking. So if I'm the spectator, if I'm doing the spectatorship, I'm looking. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, let's look at this quickly. I'm not even going to, this is Titian's Venus of Urbina from 1538. You don't need to know that necessarily. I just want you to look at that and tell me, how do you see this? Why do you think the Venus is here? And why, kind of, what message she projects? Why do you think she's here? What message she projects? Why do you think Titian put this woman, who is actually a Venetian courtesan? She's a Venetian prostitute. Yeah, go ahead. Someone unmuted themselves. No? I was hopeful. Someone, please. Why would he put her here and paint her painstakingly for many months?
Maybe because she was like the most beautiful person of that town or whatever. Because Venus is the most beautiful goddess.
Okay, maybe because she is very good looking, and Venetians really kind of enjoyed like lighter reddish hair. Absolutely. Venus is a goddess of love, so he calls her Venus because, you know, there's implications here, or kind of he wants us to think about love. He also cannot just paint Venus. He cannot just paint the courtesan. He has to really have an explanation for that, and this is his kind of excuse. Yeah.
It looks like there's a girl in the background crying, so maybe Venus came to let her know that love is coming her way or something like that.
Okay, so maybe love is coming. She's actually not crying. She's looking at the chest. She's inside. She's a servant. She's looking at the chest. But this is a really, really good point, though, because because this painting is essentially kind of the idea, the chest and the woman there is the idea of marriage. So that painting symbolizes kind of love and marriage in the future, and loyalty. Look at the little dog there. However, we didn't answer the main question. Why do we have a naked woman here?
I feel like she may be like the symbol of like idealized beauty. Like this is what
Yes.
like a beautiful woman looks like. This is what like the standard is.
Yes, absolutely. The standard. So she is very beautiful, and she is definitely idealized, and she shows us what idealized kind of beauty, what idealized femininity looks like. She's looking back at us, right? But does it look threatening? Does she allow us to appreciate her? I think so. I think she's pretty cool. cool with us checking her out. I think she's okay with that. And that means that who has the power here?
Her,
Okay, why? Why do you
because
think
she's inviting you to look.
she's inviting you to look? Yeah. She's looking at back and she's saying, if you want, you can look. I'm good. So because she's looking back at us, she takes some of the power at least, quite a bit of it, and kind of invites us. But most of the representations here, are normally don't have a woman looking back at us. They invite us to see without actually taking it back. So even if I go back to Mary Oppenheim here, she's also nude. Who has the power here?
I feel like we do because she's not like looking our way. She's like looking down.
Yes. You're saying that we do because she's not looking back, she's looking away, she's letting us examine her, she's letting us see. So we can call it, nowadays we call it objectification, right? We talk about objectifying. So it's much more comfortable maybe for us to objectify here Mary Oppenheim and kind of like than necessarily look at Venus or Urbina here. We're comfortable enough, but there is a point, I think, there is a point if you think about it, there is a point where you look at her and you know, there's a finite point where you're like, okay, I've seen enough. I need to do something else. I need to look around. So that is gaze. This is the idea of the gaze. The gaze is a look. It's not a glance. It's not something where you look at quickly and turn around. The gaze is the sustained look, where you're actually looking at someone for quite a while. Now, I'm not going to do it today, but I'm going to urge you to do this experiment. Find yourself a friend and ask your friend to do whatever, and just for 30 seconds kind of gaze at them, and then ask your friend to look back at you and kind of have a staring contest for 30 seconds and see how you feel. Just because it is really interesting how looking back kind of makes us react in a very different way. And that idea of what I want to kind of get at here today is the idea of the power relationship that is embedded in the gaze. So in other words, I'm going to be as everyday as you know, as pedestrian as possible. So, you know, if you are in Geneseo on the main street and you're sitting in Crickets or somewhere else, and you see someone who is very attractive going by, you're going to check them out. And if you check them out just for like 2 seconds, but if you kind of stare at them for like 15 to 30, that becomes a gaze. And that is, and then there is a power relationship in that, because whoever you are, when you're looking at them, you're kind of taking that in, and you're consuming the appearance of that person. And then sometimes, you know, if you stare at them long enough, they're going to turn around and stare back at you or smile at you and let you know that they like you. So that changes things. Okay, so this is the gaze as a power, as a power relationship between two people. This is what is at the heart of a lot of older movies, especially Hollywood movies, kind of the idea of looking at people and being objectifying people. But there is also a different way of thinking about the gaze as a field of gaze. So before we continue, do you have any questions? Anything that?
Just before I get started on the interior, I'll get these floor mats quickly sprayed off, and then using some APC diluted 4:1, I'll hit them with the drill brush to get them nice and clean.
We need someone to mute because we've got something else going on. Thank you. Okay, that's not the questions that I was interested in. I want something more related to the material, please. So far, so good. Okay. All right. So the gaze as a field. So so far we talk about like kind of interaction between two people, but now we're going to talk about interaction between several people. So then we have like a field. What I mean is like a group or a place where people could potentially congregate, like a museum. In a museum, okay, so you go to museum, you are supposed to look at the pictures, but let's be honest, we also check other people out. We watch people, how they react to art, what they're talking about, how they are dressed, who is attractive, who is super attractive, etc. So that is the field of the gaze. And how that field of the gaze is constructed reflects kind of broader historical and social context. So I'm going to show you the painting that your book talks quite a bit about as well. And this is an older picture, but this is probably one of the coolest paintings ever made. Because it is so complex. And this is it's just art historians kind of think about this as something that really changed the game for art, because here we have a completely different approach to the painting of portrait and to painting in general. So I'm showing you here Diego Velázquez, Las Meninas from 1656. And I want you to again look at the painting, and in the chat, tell me what you see, like kind of like what you notice, or most interesting thing. What is the most noticeable thing for you, or most interesting thing for you? Just a minute or two. Just type in the chat what you like about this. I really the color scheme, the mirror at the back of the room. Okay. Everyone is looking at something that the viewer cannot see. Okay, that's perfect. I really like the figure in the background stepping out of the door. Facial expressions. The guy on the left holding a paintbrush seems out of place, and almost because everyone is focused on the girl. Yes. I like the tone and visual representation. The child in the front attracts attention. Yes. The blonde girl, the little girl, seems to be the focus. Everyone is looking different places. Also the dark background. Okay. Detail in clothes, very interesting. Yes. I like this piece. I really like how bright the little girl is, and how she's the brightest in the room, and everything is darker gradually becomes darker. Yes. And the man in the shadow to the right. Okay. There's another girl on the right side, it seems, and they're wearing darker colors and then less noticeable than the girl in the dress. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. So the coolness of this picture is because really, as some of you noticed, there are so many things going on. And while the Infanta Margareta Teresa is the main focus of the painting, it is impossible for us to just look at her without kind of our eye kind of constantly getting distracted and going around and looking at other things. So in a way, it is not like, you know, those Renaissance art that has one point perspective that meets at the same point, and there is a one scene that is painted. This one has kind of interaction between all the parts, and this is what makes it interesting. So this person here that is with the paintbrush, that is the artist, Diego Rodriguez de Silva y Velázquez, 1599 to 1660. It is, so he's a court painter of the King Philip IV. And that king and queen appear for us here. Velázquez is hired to paint the portrait of this little princess. And he approaches that painting from a very interesting angle. One of the audacious things that Velázquez is doing is inserting not only himself, because artists had inserted their likeness into paintings before, that's not the first time, but Velázquez inserts not only himself as like someone, he inserts himself as an artist, and he also dedicates probably like, you know, like 1/5 of the painting to himself and his canvas. So this is very unusual. He also, and so let's think about like, how does that work? Let me see if I have some, no, I don't, sorry, I have some. So this is the detail of Velázquez painting. His clothes show that he's an important court painter. Now I have here Infanta Margareta, who, yes, some of you noticed that the light is on her. She's the brightest point in the room. Right behind her on one side, there is a portrait, well, there is a mirror that reflects king and queen. And then on the other side, we have the door open with this man who we really don't know who he is. We kind of like, someone did research and we kind of figured out who he is. He's one of the kind of mid-level servants of the king and queen coming for something, we don't know what. But why Velázquez would actually portray him, we don't understand, except that he seems to show us the exit out of here. And that exit had been interpreted as exit out of the court, exit out of the monarchy, kind of like exit out of this very oppressive environment of the Spanish court. So anything like that is a fair game. This is as close as we can get, and to the king and the queen, and Philip IV is very clear here that it's him. Kind of his very kind of oval face is fairly clear here. Now we've got next to the Infanta, next to the princess, we have her ladies in waiting on either side, and then the dog, and then we also have the two little people that also constitute the part of her entourage, the kind of her like she always goes with people who will entertain her. So these are her entertainers. Good life. And then behind, those are her people who are supposed to teach her. Those are her teachers. So they are kind of there. They just follow. So the entire painting here this is the other lady in waiting, kind of on the other side. They're entertaining her, but let's go back. So the entire painting essentially tells us, okay, Velasquez was in the room quietly and nicely painting the king and the queen, who are standing where we are standing right now as viewers. It's a large piece, 9 by 6 feet. So if we put it on the wall and look at that, we will be standing pretty much where presumably the king and queen stands, right? Does that make sense? Yeah. So he's been painting them in his studio, and we know that it's his studio because of these two paintings that actually he had in his studio. So this is his studio in the palace. Then all of a sudden the door opens and this little creature, the daughter, comes in to check what's going on. So she comes in, but she never goes alone. And this whole crowd of people kind of come in to see what's going on. She stands and looks. She's young. She's probably, I think she's about 5 here. She looks at her parents kind of being painted, but she also looks at us because we are here as viewers. And then her ladies in waiting are looking at her, while this little person is looking at the dog, seems like, and this person is also looking at us / king and queen. So there are so many, there's a whole system, a whole dialogue of kind of looking or gaze that is going on. Plus behind this lady in waiting, these two adults that are the man and the woman, they don't seem to even notice anything. They're just immersed in their conversation. So all that is really kind of like, this is the example of the field of the gaze. Okay, so what Velasquez is doing for us here is he creates for us an ambiguous spectator. So we are the external spectator. We are the viewer. So that viewer becomes ambiguous because A, we're not really sure where we're supposed to stand vis-a-vis the painting. I'll come back to that in a sec. I'm just going to go and show you again. Like, there are several focal points, so we don't know where are we supposed to be, in the middle or slightly to the right or slightly to the left. So Las Meninas, the actual title is Ladies in Waiting. So he's actually, he's tricking us. He's playing with us because the subject has gotta be Maria and Margareta Teresa or King and Queen. How come it's Ladies in Waiting? So he's kind of changing that. So the composition shows us the entirety of the room, kind of 5 planes, including floor and ceiling. So we're kind of present and we're looking into the room. And to center Infanta Margarita at the door, this person has been identified who's at the door, Jose Nieto Velasquez. We're not sure he's a relative of the artist. And we are spectators, we substitute the king and the queen. Now, there is an art historian, Jason Farraga, who says that the Las Meninas is the first photobomb because Margarita essentially photobombed the painting. on one hand. On the other hand, it's Velázquez who essentially photobombed. Nobody expected him to insert himself in the painting. It was accepted afterwards. We don't know of any scandal or controversy, but we also don't know. It's been a long time ago. So he disrupts the circuit of power of queen and king being portrayed, and the kind of this whole courtly procedure. And the door probably symbolizes the outside, the away from the princess and from royalty. Oh gosh, I need to change that term, the royalty, so that outside of the oppressive court. So in essence, so why is it so important for us? It's the idea of like that field of the gaze, but also because all of a sudden, all the kind of ideas of representation becomes less stable. Whose portrait is that really? Who are we portraying here? An artist, his status, a little girl, as a whole court, like what are we representing? That it destabilizes it's for us. And for 1656, it is so awesome and so unusual. And there are art historians who are still kind of trying to figure out what it all means. Questions, comments? So this is just people standing, so this is the size. All right, okay. So I will go, I think I will leave the rest of it, most of it, for later. I want to do two things. I want to show you on Canvas what okay, stop sharing. I want to kind of outline what we're doing in the next couple of weeks on Canvas. And then I want you to kind of to think what you remembered from today. So what did I do? Sorry. Okay, you can still see Canvas, right? Yeah. Okay, so from last week, what I've been doing is marking your encoding and decoding assignment, and I've been emailing, I've emailed you. So make sure that you submit by September 24. Now, next week, like this time around. So here's what we're doing. The test for chapter 3 is on October 5th. So you have 2 weeks. In the meantime, I am also asking you to do two things. I'm asking you to complete the module 1 and 2 work. Remember the icons in our society. Some of you started submitting that. And I'm also asking you to work on this module. And it's due on October 1st. Let me show you what I have here. So this is a module about kind of gaze and gendered representation from Artemisia Gentileschi, who is a Baroque female artist, to Me Too of today. I'm asking you to watch these YouTube videos, read these articles. Most of them are from Popular Press. There is no real kind of challenge to that. And then I'm asking you to answer 3 out of 5 questions, okay? And then the submission for that, is right here, okay? So you submit this right here. You can work with a friend. Just make sure that both of you submit. You can work as 3, but no more. But make sure that you submit each individual with the names, etc. Okay? Now, because you're doing that, we're not going to have like a synchronous Zoom class on Thursday and the following Tuesday. So next time I will see you will be October 1st. So the next 2 classes, I'm not doing a lecture. There are no makeup assignments for that. This is the time for you to do module 3 work, okay? In addition to that, these are short videos here. So these 3 here that I have, I really want you to watch them. They're all, each of them about 6 minutes. Kind of to, again, add to your understanding of the subject. And then I will see you on the 1st for more work, okay? Now, before you go, I want you to write in the chat one thing that you remember from today's class. Anything you remember from today's class, a sentence or 2, please write it. And then you're welcome to kind of leave the meeting closed, and I will enjoy the weather, have a nice few days, and I will see you in a week and a half.
Are we supposed to be doing the TikTok video gaze analysis?
No, I just unpublished that because I was hoping to do it today, but we did not have time for that, so don't worry about it. I just took it off. Any other questions?
There's a module that says module 1-2 works icons in our society, and it also says that it's due October 1st.
Yep.
So are both modules 1, 2, and 3 due October 1st?
Yeah, sorry, I just gave you more time, but yeah, 1 and 2, that one is fairly short, yeah.
For the past quizzes that we've completed, will you ever show the correct answers for the ones we got wrong?
I wasn't planning on that because the system shows you correct answers. But if you want, you're welcome to either like come into my office hours or Tommy or Jen's office hours, and we can go over it with you. But I wasn't thinking of actually kind of posting that.
Yeah, because when you go into the old quizzes, it still says the correct answers are hidden.
Okay. All right, hold on. So when you do the quiz, it shows you the correct answer at least once, right?
No.
No?
It like will tell you that you got a question incorrect, but it does not like give you any sort of indication of what the answer should have been.
Okay, so let me, okay, so you need to see correct answers. Okay, I need one person to, if I don't follow up with you on that and email everyone that I've changed that system on Canvas, I need a volunteer who will remind me on Friday to do that. Please, I wrote it down in my diary. I'll put it in, but I still, there's so much going on. Okay, do we have a volunteer? Jen, are you there?
I'm here. I'll remind you.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, so Jen will remind me, and I will, okay, so yeah, so I will make sure that you will be able to see the correct answers when you do a quiz at least once after each attempt. If that's not enough, then I will follow up. After that, if you would like to go over your quiz anyways, feel free to show up for my office hours or email me, okay? Yeah, okay.
I have a question. Are we not meeting for class on, like, are we meeting for class next time? We are, right?
We are not meeting on the 24th and the 29th.
All right, awesome. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure I had that right.
Yeah, okay, that's great. Yeah, I'll also I will definitely email everyone as well. So no class Thursday and then Tuesday, but then there is a class on October 1st to prepare you
awesome.
for quiz. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
I have a question about the quizzes.
Mm-hmm.
Are you counting our score as the average between the 2 attempts? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So yeah, I'm counting the average between the two, and provided that you tried all 10, then the 2 lowest will be dropped.
Besides from module 3, what was the other thing we had to get done?
You have to do, if you go up, there is a module 1 and 2 work. You have to do that. That's a paragraph to write about the icon in our society with like, and attach an image.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Any other questions? No? Okay. Let's see. I see that you.
Have a good weekend.
Yeah, you too. Thank you. Have a good week first.
Thank you.